save.
Yeah.
Wow. Saying, look all around, look how awful this is, and you're not doing anything. That's how the book opens. So from a personal faith perspective, wherever you are when you come to this book, you have found someone on your journey who is willing to be as honest with God and with you as you could possibly be, I think. And yet, I start with the beginning in that question, and then as it goes through it, the answer, that question's never answered. Habakkuk's too smart for that.
No.
But then at the very end, though the fig tree does not blossom, there's no fruit on the vines, though the produce of the olives fail, fields yield no food. So even though everything around is just really looking bad, it says, and yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will exalt in the God of my salvation. I love it that he frames it in futures.
Yeah.
So even if you can't rejoice now,
Yes.
I'm not in a good mood now, but I hope one day.
Yeah, there's hope that one day God will bring you back to that place of rejoicing. Yeah.
So it's a book that travels from realism and kind of a stark, painful realism to not, everything's great.
No.
But one day I hope that this will be so. So
it's lovely.
It is. And then, I do
the vision?
The vision.
Yeah, you do the vision.
Probably the most famous thing out of Habakkuk is in chapter 2.
There's a famous thing out of Habakkuk?
Absolutely. I've heard lots of people talk about this. And I will stand at the watch post, station myself on the rampart, and I will keep watch to see what God will say to me. The Lord answers and says, write the vision, make it plain, and he says, write the letters big enough that a runner can see it from a long way away. So it'd be like, make a billboard and make the words big so that somebody driving at 65 miles per hour, is going to be able to see it and read it. Interestingly, we don't actually get what exactly the vision is here. But a lot of churches, a lot of communities use this text when they're talking about their own futures and about strategic planning. And I think, on the one hand, I'm a huge fan of strategic planning. It helps to know...
Instead of willy-nilly planning?
Well, yeah, it helps to know where you're headed. But then I love, and this is to me a word of slight caution, that the vision itself is not clearly articulated. So it reminds me of a pastor I've heard recently who says, plan as well as you can, plan as much as you can, and then know that, God is what happens as the plan shifts and morphs. And there are always things the Spirit will bring you that you haven't possibly planned for. I think Dwight Eisenhower, the old general, said, spend as much time on your plans as you can, and then throw them away once the battle begins. It's a paraphrase, sorry, Dwight. So, and I kind of feel that with, write the vision, set it high, and then you're kind of waiting for it. So what's the vision? And there's silence there. So it's an interesting text. Yeah. Then you're going to talk about another famous. It is famous. It gets lifted.
It does get lifted. By Paul, I believe.
Yes, and developed.
So the next famous part comes from the 2nd chapter, verse 4. It's just one verse that says, "Look at the proud. Their spirit is not right in them, but the righteous live by their faith." Yeah, and that's going to get picked up and developed by Paul in Romans. Don't you feel like Romans is really just a commentary on the minor prophets?
I've never thought about it like that, Nicole. Do you feel it's a commentary on the minor prophets?
I do. After going through them, I'm like, Paul's ripping off most of these guys.
Yeah.
In a really... Developing. Right. But it's in a really interesting way. Like, I want to do a study on it now.
Yeah.
Paul and the Prophets. Sounds like a good book.
It does sound like a good book. I'd buy it.
Trademarked.
You heard it here first.
So, lifting up this idea of
I'm curious,
righteousness.
What is faith to you? Since the righteous shall live by their faith. What is that?
I think faith, as we've kind of mentioned before, goes along with covenant. Like, I think I think faith in a lot of ways is just a synonym for covenant. In that you stick with it.
Interesting.
And that's the aspect of it. Yeah. That you're going to go with God, even if you don't understand where it's going.
Yes.
And
so you don't know where it's headed, but you're putting...
Yeah.
So I hear kind of an action-oriented sense
yes.
there.
Like, I think it has very little to do with, like, right belief. You know, and that's so how we frame it in the church.
Well, and then I think that's why we get so concerned about having doubts or questions.
Yeah.
Because you think like that's somehow a weak faith.
Right.
Whereas what you're talking about is, no. Faith is moving towards, moving forward, even when... especially when you have doubts or questions.
Yes.
It's like, are you like Habakkuk and say, I can't see you, God, but I'm still going to write a book to you.
Yes, and I feel you going this way, and I don't know where we're going, but we're going to go.
Oh, I am completely with you.
Thanks.
On that.
I like it.
Well, no, one of the things that I like, in Greek, there are at least a couple words for knowing. There's like oida, which has to do with seeing, and there's gnosko, which has to do with feeling. But faith, it's the word pistis. This is not a word for knowledge. And so there's this sense of, faith is what you have when you don't have knowledge of what's coming next. Like I've heard people talk about, like it's a dark room, and faith is what, when you can't see anything, you don't know anything, you can't believe anything. It's not about belief.
Yeah.
But it's about walking into that dark room, trusting.
Yeah, it's much more about
that
trust.
The floor is gonna be there.
When I was in Greek and trying to remember how to remember pisteo, which is faith, or pistis, I remembered it like pistons in a car, where they're part of the machine, but it doesn't know where it's going, but it works at it and keeps it going.
Interesting.
Even though...
No, and you don't know quite where
you're
at.
Interesting. Yeah, you're not in the driver's seat, you're not in the controlling,
that's
but
also
you just keep going.
I've never heard that.
Yeah.
I like that.
Thanks. It's like my mnemonic device. I learned how to do it.
See, I've never liked mnemonics because I'm always worried you're going to remember the mnemonic and not... Like, you could never think of the word without that. But I like that one because that's like a mnemonic that's actually giving substance to the word.
Yeah.
And as we've talked with Hebrew, there's no way to remember Hebrew without mnemonics.
No, there's really not. So that's Habakkuk.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else?
No, I think that's a great discussion.
Great. Okay, we'll see you for Zephaniah.
Zephaniah, which I think I knew someone in Texas named. I'm kidding, I didn't.
Zephy?
We'll see you in a minute.